Well, my name is JoEllen Wilson. I'm with Bonefish and Tarpon Trust, and from here on out, it'll be known as BTT. BTT, there we go. Well, it's well known that juvenile fishes depend on estuarine habitats as nurseries. However, this is an abstract concept that doesn't provide sufficient leverage for estuarine conservation. It's either too broad, too general, and it's difficult to communicate to managers. But we can use certain species to provide leverage for conservation. They must have a large economic impact, be charismatic, and use a coastal habitat mosaic that is also used by other species that benefit from this conservation. These are known as umbrella species, and meet your umbrella species for today, Tarpon and Snook. Snook and tarpon use many facets of the estuarine habitat mosaic, right? So they broadcast or they spawn offshore, snook on the barrier islands. The larvae traverse the estuary and make their way up into the tidal creeks. Study done by Andrew Barber in the Charlotte Harbor creeks noticed that there was a size correlation. So the farther up in the creeks, the smaller the snook were, and they get larger as you move out to the mouth of the creek. Initially, we thought juvenile tarpon would stay, because they have a much later maturation age, that they'd stay in these nursery habitats for multiple years. But a BTT study found that they actually left after 1 year in these nursery habitats. Both species are also economically valuable. The name of this session is Billion Dollar Bays. We support a $7.6 billion fishery. We have tons of studies on tarpon economic impacts, and same for snook as well. So 2 years ago, BTT started the Juvenile Tarpon Habitat Mapping Project to find juvenile tarpon nursery habitats. We found that they overlap a lot with snook nursery habitats, so the data is applicable to snook as well. We used anglers as citizen scientists to find the current habitats for tarpon that were 12 inches and under. Along with other questions, we also asked if they would characterize this habitat as natural or altered. And really what we wanted to know is, can they effectively assess habitat? Can we use anglers, not just for their fish counts or their catch logs, but also to give us an idea of how the habitat is. With the help of habitat suitability modelers at FWRI, we created this list of juvenile tarpon habitat essentials that can be objectively ranked. And these create the blueprints for a productive nursery habitat. We separated these sites into natural and altered. We compared with what the anglers said to what we found. And we found in Charlotte Harbor, they did great. Of 19 sites that they reported, all of them had the same assessment that we did. So that means that anglers can be both an effective and efficient way of assessing these habitats. In BTT, so what we do is we separate into natural and altered habitats. The natural habitats are slated for protection, whereas the altered are for habitat restoration. And FWC's habitat restoration arm have already approached us to use our data, and we collaborate with many other agencies on these habitat restoration projects. So BTT can identify snook and tarpon nursery habitats and directly relate these habitats to an economic value. So this is not ecosystem monitoring, which is kind of this abstract idea that nobody really knows how to do. I mean, these are quantitative data that we can use. Okay, these are a few BTT study highlights. So in the top left, Wildflower Preserve, which is near Boca Grande. We found a place that was high densities of juvenile tarpon. However, they had extremely poor growth. And what this tells us is just because juvenile fish are in these habitats, it doesn't make it a good and productive habitat. At Bee Gum, which is the bottom left, that's a mosquito impoundment on the Indian River Lagoon that housed these snook and tarpon, and they're essentially captive inside this habitat. And we worked with managers to have them open the impoundments in the summers, which is counterintuitive. So that way that we had much more immigration because it's coinciding with their spawning times. Coral Creek Preserve on the top right near Boca Grande, we have 6 different canals, and we're able to test 3 different restoration designs. And this really helps us refine our restoration plans moving forward. So fish management is becoming more difficult because plans often don't include habitat. Estuaries decline due to habitat loss, degradation, and altered flows, and the opportunity to combine the needs of fisheries managers who are protecting the habitat and ecosystem managers who are protecting the function of the estuaries. Really, we can use these umbrella species in order to garner the support. All right, thank you.